I really feel like I am supposed to be blind. Like that is something that was meant to be in my life to let me, or to let me be who I was supposed to be.
I want you to think about one moment in your life that was truly devastating. Something you thought you would never get past. Now, sit with that for a second. Take a deep breath and see where you are now. How far you've come. Pretty resilient, aren't you? I think so. Breaks lead to breakthroughs. When you're going through it, it's hard to imagine. I get it. The pain is raw. The possibilities seem non-existent, but something deep inside us says more. And when we are given a second chance, we better do something about it, right? John Furniss lost his sight at 16. Anxiety and depression consumed him, drugs numbed him, until it became too much and he attempted suicide. Now blind, John is using that loss as a gain. A master woodsman who I guess you could say sees things differently on many levels. On this episode of HIListically Speaking, get to know his story behind the Blind Woodsman, how John made a powerful choice to learn a new trade that turned into artistic genius, why it's okay not to be okay and ask for help when you need it, and learn how to open your heart again to yourself and others, because let's face it, love is blind and beautiful when you give it a chance. Third time's the charm, John Furniss.
Oh, yeah.
Blind Woodsman. I am so glad to have this time with you on HIListically Speaking. We're definitely in Mercury retrograde because we went through this recording process a couple times. But I just want to say thank you so much for holding space for me and sharing with me on the show. I came to find you on TikTok, which I'm relatively new to, actually very new to. And I was just sitting there scrolling through and I saw this kind soul, which you are. You put that out there. And everything that you're sharing with what you do with your wife, Annie, and your story in itself, which basically, I think, as you mentioned, we were chit-chatting before, TikTok has taken it to the next level for you. So I want to just kick it off and share with folks the Blind Woodsman. John Furniss is joining us, and you are a phenomenal, an artist. And many people might wonder when you're losing a sense of sight, how you are able to make such exquisite woodworking items, but also your story goes further back on how that even happened, the event of losing your sight. And if we could start there, I'd like to go from there.
Okay. Well, I lost my sight when I was 16 years old. And what happened was I had been experiencing really intense anxiety and depression for a few years, and I really didn't feel like I fit in with my friends or like I was appreciated by people. And it finally came to the point where I attempted suicide, and I shot myself. And I'm extremely blessed because it only took my sense of sight and my sense of smell, but my mind and my brain was left completely intact. And I don't know what it was, call it luck, a divine intervention, whatever it may be. And it's something that I've adapted to becoming blind so quickly and so well that I really feel like I am supposed to be blind. Like that is something that was meant to be in my life to let me, or to let me be who I was supposed to be.
It's so interesting to hear you say that. And I hear that a lot from people that I have conversations with, that, life is about the traumas that we go through become our triumphs, as as HIListically Speaking shares, but also our mess becomes our message, and we all face adversities in life, and some are smaller, some are bigger, and clearly we go through many, right? But
Yeah.
the lesson that you can walk away from that is quite powerful. How have you moved forward using that loss as a gain in a different area?
Well, it's been a long process. I mean, I didn't really, I certainly didn't start my journey as a blind person thinking I was supposed to be blind. That definitely took a few years of coping and, really kind of finding out who I am. And I think I really started feeling that way more, probably about 10 years ago or so, somewhere in that neighborhood anyway. And that's actually about the time I moved up here to Washington State to go to a piano school for the blind, and not a school where you learn to play pianos, but a school where you learn to tune and repair pianos. And it's specifically for the blind. It's world renowned. I mean, like literally, they've had students from all over the world. And unfortunately, that closed down about, I want to say 5 years ago. And was open since 1939. But it kind of became acoustic pianos are kind of starting to go out of fashion. And yeah, there's tons and tons of them out there, but it kind of reflects also the change in the job market for the blind because of technology and awareness. There have been a lot more opportunities that have opened up for blind people. So it's kind of a bittersweet sort of a thing.
What made you decide that you wanted to go that route and get into piano repair? Do you always wanted to work with your hands, or were you always into that kind of work?
I've always wanted to work with my hands. I've always been really good with my hands and not so much computers. And that has been a huge roadblock for me as a blind person, because most employment, particularly back when I when I first came up here, it really was more geared towards computers. And if you were good with your hands, like I'm certified in small engine repair, and I'm a woodworker, and I love to work with my hands. But the problem is those industries are inherently dangerous, and I'm a huge liability. And I get that, but it's kind of a bummer because what do I do, And so I had, it was in 2000, what would it have been? 2005. I started attending a school for the blind in Salt Lake City that, not an academic school, so to speak, more of an independent living training center. And they worked in conjunction with vocational rehab. And basically, a lot of their clients were kids transitioning from home to out on their own, or adults that had newly become blind and kind of needed to learn the ropes. And part of that school was a wood shop. And I kind of thought they were out of their minds at first, but I've always been adventurous, and I've always been into working with my hands. So I figured I'd give it a try. And that totally changed my life. I found my one thing that everybody talks about, the one thing that you do better than anything else you've ever tried. And for me, that's woodworking.
I'm curious also, with your working in woodworking and having such a love for it, when you were working with the pianos, did you find that your other senses were stronger? Hearing and being able to tune, and I mean, what did it do?
Yes and no. I mean, because I did learn how to tune, but I was not really a great tuner. So when I graduated, I didn't tune pianos, I rebuilt pianos. I did full new strings, new hammers, basically tear it completely down and build it back up again. And so, but I did find my other senses kind of getting sharper. And the ones that I really felt getting sharper were like my fine detail, spatial awareness. And I've always had really, really keen spatial awareness. Like that's a real rarity for most blind people, because how can you take a gym that's 1,000 square feet and put it into something that someone can feel in one feel, and know what that 1,000 square feet actually is, the way that you can look at it and just see, okay, that's a big space. That's, that wall is so far away. That wall is so far away. And with pianos, you really had to, they're very precise, very fine tolerances and things like that.
So when you think about the fine detail of a beautiful instrument like a piano, and being able to repair something, build something, and put something together, how did that transfer into your work with your own beautiful work that you do in woodworking, which was so stunning?
Thank you very much. The woodworking really led to the piano work, to tell the truth, because I worked with vocational rehab for several months while I was attending the school. And the problem, they ran into the same problem that I talked about before. Places where you do mechanics and woodworking and stuff like that they're dangerous. I can't, like they wouldn't really think that I would be able to do it safely. And I understand that. I really do get that. But at the same time, it was, really a bummer. And also they weren't having really any success finding me jobs elsewhere, even like bagging groceries, because I am a blind man with very little job history and a criminal record that luckily I was able to get a pardon from the governor of the governor of the state of Colorado in 2019. And I mean, it was a felony charge. And that really was an extreme roadblock in my life. I mean, when it comes to a job, first off, I'm blind. I don't really have much job history to speak of. You put felon on top of it, and they wouldn't even give me the time of day. And it wasn't, violent or anything like that. It was actually a drug-related felony. And but it didn't matter. That word is one of the biggest obstacles to you in the world, really. I mean, the job market, you're the last to be chosen. You're like bottom of the barrel for sure. And then as far as housing goes, I almost was not able to move up to Washington because no one would give me an apartment. Literally, they said, all the places I called said, we don't rent to felons. No ifs, ands, or buts, just we don't rent to felons, which should be illegal in itself. I mean, that's just ridiculous that people have to be pinned down by that their whole lives.
Well, yeah, it's like a scarlet letter on you.
So,
yeah,
absolutely. And so that was a really big roadblock for me. And so with vocational rehab, they weren't really having much success. And so I had actually made really close friends with the woodshop teacher there, and he's still a really close friend. And he had just retired, so he invited me over to just come and hang out and woodwork in his shop. So for the next few years, I refined my woodworking skills. I built a table that I like to call the crown jewel of my career. It's hard to describe. I mean, it's really extraordinary. It's a piece of art as well as a table. It's very sculptural. It's two different kinds of wood. There's lots of different lamination layers and trim. I'm sure Annie can send a picture if you want to.
Oh, well, I'm trying to envision it myself and use my own inner sight, right? Because I don't have,
Mhm.
I'm not seeing this, but I guess that leads me to that next question. How do you create something so ornate and beautiful with different inlays and colors when you're not using the visual element to be able to create?
Well, since I had vision before I became blind,
Mm-hmm.
I I have a visual memory and imagination that it's like having a computer design program in my mind. I have there's a condition that a lot of blind people have that have formerly been cited called Charles Bonnet syndrome. Now, what that is it's not very well understood, but it's visual hallucinations that they think their best guess is it's your visual cortex keeping itself busy because it's such a large part of your brain and such an integral part. I mean, it's your most important sense when it really comes down to it. And so a lot of people, it's like imagery, and some people it's very detrimental to some people. They think they're going crazy, and it doesn't have anything to do with any sort of brain malfunction or damage or anything like that. It's think of it like when someone loses a finger or a limb, they will feel phantom pain in that finger or limb, even though it's not there anymore.
Right.
And
Phantom.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. So in my opinion, I think it's sort of the visual version of that.
Wow.
And so what I see is it's colors. It's sort of like the snow on a TV screen, static on a TV screen, but with red and black instead of white and black. And then there's patches of blue that kind of move around and morph into different shapes. And it doesn't move as fast as the static on TV. And then I've learned to make that basically the background, and I can imagine whatever image I want over the top of it. So I see my finished piece before it even touches the lathe.
Mm.
And I can change the colors, the shape, the pattern, anything I want until it's just how I want it. And then I have just a really keen ability on turning that visual image into a physical object. I've always, that's that when I was talking about earlier how quickly I adapted, that was one of the things that I just was able to turn a physical object into an image in my mind. I would play a game with my nieces and nephews where they would bring me something and I would tell them what it was.
Well, I remember that in a recent TikTok video you had with Annie, where because she's also an artist, Annie being your wife, who is just talented in her own right. And we'll talk about Annie a little bit, definitely. But she had handed you, she put in your hand some of her wool work, and it was like so beautiful when you were just like, oh, this is a bunny. Oh, this is a heart. Oh, and you really could feel and see exactly what you saw in a different way. And it was really beautiful to witness that. It was really beautiful to witness that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome how her and I have learned to connect, even though I'm blind and she's a visual artist, and we've really found our people. The stars aligned that day when we met. And
I would love for you to share some about that. Definitely.
I will.
Yeah. Can we just stop for a second? Because I have to mention one thing that made me truly fall in love with both of you is just the beautiful relationship you do have. You call her Honeybee, like it just in everything you share. She's so present to the world that you're sharing each other with, or you're sharing yourselves with. You call her Honeybee, and it's just such an endearing, loving kindness that comes through you. But I see it from her as well. And, there's parts of me that think, like you said, she can see, she's a visual artist, and here she is falling in love with someone who has lost their sense of sight, the sense of sight that we all know as sight, right? But you have an inner sight, and
I lost my sight. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, guys, I was going to say the inner sight is the heart.
I lost my sight, but I gained vision.
Oh, John, come on now. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's really how I feel. You know,
that's beautiful.
I lost my sight, but I gained a lot of vision.
Yeah. And I would imagine learning experiences from everything you went through, like you said, even the attempted suicide, the loss of the sight, the loss of smell. So you've actually lost two, and I guess using the word loss is so strong, but there's been two elements, as we know, the five senses that you no longer have. But who says that those senses, there's the awareness should be an extra sense, right? So the vision that you have, I love that you say that. Yeah. Beautiful. So would you say that you said this needed to happen, or you think this happened for a reason? What would that reason be?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I am meant to help people, and I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself or anything like that. I don't know. I love to help people, and I love to, if my sharing my story can help someone through their hard times, then that's what I want to do. That's how I want to live. And I feel like my blindness has allowed me to, I guess, how can I put it? It's like to slow down and examine life, to be able to contemplate it more. I don't know, because as a blind person, I'm in my head all the time. Even when I'm with other people, I'm still in my head because I'm creating my reality through my imagination. So it's allowed me to kind of, I don't know, just have an extra sort of space, I guess you could say, to contemplate things.
Wow. That's beautiful. And I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, we get so in our heads every day, and we are so, and maybe I shouldn't say we, I'll say I, but from what I hear from other people, there's a sense of we can, or there's an overwhelming sense that comes to play. And when you remove that sense, it really, it makes the others become stronger. Yeah. And then going inward,
My friend, one of my best friends, TJ, he said to me one time that he envied my ability to imagine things. And he explained, he said, when we talk about a place like a store or somewhere that we've been, you're there. Like in your head, you basically are there, because in my mind, that's how I experience that place, is I picture what I think it is, and I use that picture to navigate. That's what I do all the time, every day. And he was like, when there's a pile of stuff, you see that pile in 3 dimensions. You know where any particular object is in whatever level of that pile. And he said he really envied that. And I didn't think about that as much. I guess I kind of took that for granted, how I really do when I see things in 3 dimensions more than I ever used to, because it's in my mind. I created a 3-dimensional computer image, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. And not everyone is visual. I work in the work I do in mental health and work in hypnotherapy. There is a level of when I'm supporting clients, I have to be very mindful of whether they have the ability to do visualization, because not everyone is
Yeah.
wired that way. They have a
Hmm.
difficult time visioning and doing visual creative visualizations. So
Yeah.
I can understand how some people would be a little envious of that, because you want to be
Hmm.
able to escape to that place and you don't have a
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. And I've learned to use it to my benefit. It really, it's and even the colors and things that when that first started full on, it was not useful. It was very, very distracting. And it took about a year for it to reach the intensity that it is now. But it really, I mean, I've already had trouble sleeping. I was an insomniac before I became blind, and blindness is something that can ramp that up to 1,000. And with me, it did. And then you throw in all the colors and stuff. I can't get away from it. There's no closing your eyes to get away from something. It's just in your mind. And so I had to learn to not only cope with it, but to use it. And I've been able to turn it to my great benefit. But at first it was not that way.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, seeing the world in color, I would. It sounds like something so beautiful, but when you have no choice and you can't
Yeah.
pull vision to something else and come
Yeah.
back to like this state of sight, I don't even know what that would feel like. But you've used it to your benefit. You've talked about your story, your own story from trauma to triumph, and how do you find that? Well, first of all, I want to mention that talking with John Furniss here on Holistically Speaking, the Blind Woodsman. And please, if this episode is touch moving and inspiring you in any way, consider sharing it with just one person. You might make a difference. I know John already in seeing your TikTok first, like that was the first way I found you. And then seeing the content you're putting out. And we're going to drop all the links to your TikTok and your Instagram, everything, just so people can find you, because it's not just about the work you do, which is beautiful. It's about the inner work that you're sharing, the work that you share as a human being. And as you mentioned, putting your content out there. So those listening, please give it a go, and just continue supporting content like this, and artists and human beings like John. So I just want to say thank you really for being here. And to continue on to this story, I also want to share that, there is this element of a relationship that you've created. We're going back to Annie, Honeybee,
Yes.
and that side of you and what you've been able to create with her. How has that worked for both of you, especially in the social media world? Like, how has working together with her to put your content out there helped your relationship?
Well, I mean, I'll start where it all began at the piano school, actually. It's an interesting thing too, because we would not have met if it weren't for art. And so what happened is, it was over the summer, and I was attending extra classes there because the school taught mainly tuning and just very basic repair. And the gentleman that did their major rebuilding, Rick Patton, he saw the table that I built that I had told you about, and he immediately asked me if he could teach me to rebuild pianos. He asked me if I wanted to rebuild pianos, and I said absolutely. So I was there attending extra courses, and so Annie was there, and she was there because she was a local artist that had volunteered for a fundraiser that they used to do every year. And so they would have several artists come in, and they would paint a piano, and then that piano would be placed out and sponsored by a business, and they would literally just set them out on the sidewalk and let people just come up and play. And she was painting one of the pianos in the same room where I was working on a different piano. So I walk in, and of course, like an iron bar to a magnet, first thing I do is put my hand in the wet paint on the piano she's painting. Just inevitable. That's going to happen. And luckily, she was just priming it. I didn't like poke out Mona Lisa's eye or something like that. And so we started we talked for several days while we were working in that same room. And she asked me out because I am really about like George McFly when it came to talking to women. So she called me up. That's the best way I can describe it. So she calls me up and asked me if I wanted to go on a date. And I told her I'd have to call her back. I was busy at the moment. But what it was is I couldn't think of what to do on a date because I was completely broke. I had no money at all. And so I was thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And at the time, my friend TJ and I were renting some garden plots at the local community center. They've got this big patch where they would rent out 20 by 20 foot spaces. And I had this huge patch of peas that needed to be harvested. And when I say huge, I mean huge. I didn't do like individual little trellises. I basically wove what kind of looked like a spider web across the top of the patch about a foot off the ground. So it interwove and made this like huge hedge of peas. And I realized that would be the perfect thing because she's really into nature and that kind of thing. So I called her back and said, do you want to go pick peas in my garden with me? And she said, absolutely. And so we went and we picked peas until the sun set and talked. And 3 years later, we got married in front of that same garden spot.
Beautiful. So
and
beautiful.
Yeah. And as far as the social media stuff goes, I don't know anything about computers. I really am just not great at that at all. And Annie is a whiz at social media. Like she has organized countless events and even created an event that still annually goes on in Vancouver. And she it has always been my biggest fan as well as the love of my life. She really has, like when we first got together, of course, I was doing the piano work. And for 2 years after I graduated, I rebuilt pianos. And I needed money to get all the tools for the piano work. And those tools are very expensive because, of course, they are very specialized and it's a very small community. I believe there's only 6,000 piano tuners in the United States. And then as far as rebuilding technicians go, that's even a smaller percentage. So it was pretty expensive. And so Annie ran a Kickstarter, or no, it wasn't a Kickstarter. It was a GoFundMe, and raised $16,000 for me. I was able to buy all of my piano gear. And what's really kind of cool too is the large benches I bought that I used for working on pianos. They're all on wheels. And so I took those with me, and now they're my woodshop benches too. So she raised all that money for me, and she got me interviews on the local news here that got picked up by a news station in Seattle that ended up getting picked up by the Huffington Post, and even a local newspaper in Mumbai, India, picked it up from the Huffington Post. And I got donations literally from around the world because of her social media stuff.
No, it's not because of her social media stuff. It's because of her love for John.
Absolutely.
But also,
that is absolutely right.
The skill is just a bonus.
Yeah. Well, and she, we just have a great love for each other. She is like, she is the other half of me. Like really, we complete each other's places. I don't know how else to put it. Like,
Let me ask you this. Did you ever think that with everything you've been through, and you mentioned the suicide, you mentioned the felony, and obviously blindness and loss of smell, was there a part where you're like, yeah, this is it. I'm not expecting to find love. And was that even on your radar?
I mean, I hoped it was on my radar, but it sure didn't seem like it was. Because, like I was living with my parents in Salt Lake City while I was going to the woodworking, the blind school, and then while I was woodworking with my friend. And Salt Lake City, I don't fit into Salt Lake City very well. And I really didn't have anywhere to go, anywhere to meet anybody or anything like that. And so I had kind of a lonely existence a little bit. I mean, not too much though. My friend, Chris, that taught me woodworking, he and I are best friends. We still talk, a couple times a week on the phone. But as far as like, going out and meeting people and making friends and stuff, I couldn't find a job. So there really wasn't that aspect of it. And I'm not Mormon. Like that's just not what I believe in, and my family is. But that's not, but the good thing is they're still, totally accepting of me, and we still love each other completely, and there's no tension there at all. But at the same time, Salt Lake City in particular, that's really the population around there. And so I didn't really identify with anybody. And so I didn't really, of course I didn't meet anyone to date or anything like that. And then I moved up here, and like I said, George McFly when it comes to talking to women. So that didn't really help either, but it was the best decision I ever made in my life to move up here, because I was really able to strike out on my own and really start my life with how I felt, like start my adult life. I had moved out on my own when I was 18, and that did not go very well. I ended up getting into not only using drugs, but dealing drugs. And that's how I got put on probation and got a felony on my record. And so and during that time also, I was living in these really seedy kind of boarding houses and stuff. And I got a sinus infection that I had to have 3 major surgeries. The doctors told me they don't understand not only how I didn't have brain damage, but how I was alive at all. And I actually have a carbon fiber prosthetic plate for my forehead. And I kind of realized that it was either get straightened up or die. That was really my 2 choices. And of course, my parents, they took me in because they had never abandoned me. I was the one that had decided I didn't want their help because I wanted to do, the bad things that I was doing.
Well, it's a distraction too. Getting away from the uncomfortable, diving into something that just to ease the pain in any way possible,
Absolutely. But they took me in, and I was able to get off of drugs and get off of probation. And then I discovered woodworking, which completely changed my life. I found something that was productive and that I was good at, that just really came to me, just second nature. And woodworking has been one of the most important parts of my journey to where I am and who I am today. And Annie was a huge part of my woodworking journey as well. I rebuilt pianos for a couple of years, and then realized that rebuilding pianos was not for me, because even though I was very good at it, once you learn all the ins and outs of pianos, every piano is the same 10 to 11,000 parts. And it was so repetitive that I just really couldn't see myself doing it. It was starting to suck the life out of me, because I am I'm an artist. I'm creative. I like things to change. And the other part of it too was a lot of the work. I had to have my arms out in front of me like zombie arms, and you can't rest your elbows on anything because you'll mess up what you're trying to adjust.
Yeah.
And I've broken my back 3 different times, and I've got 5 crushed vertebrae that are all right between my shoulder blades, mid back. So it would make my back hurt so bad I could hardly stand it. And for those reasons, I kind of got out of piano work. And rebuilding pianos it's a lot harder to drum up business.
Yeah.
Getting a piano rebuilt is as expensive as getting a car rebuilt. I mean, new strings and new hammers and the half a dozen other repairs that come with a piano that old, it's like $8,000 worth of work.
Yeah. Do you actually play the piano yourself?
Nope.
Do
I
you
don't
guys?
know how to play, and I've never had a desire to play it because
Does Annie play?
No. And to me, a piano was a machine. It's a mechanical work of art. And to be an instrument, it has to work perfectly as a machine first.
As do we as human beings, right?
Exactly. And it was really, really hard for me to face that realization too, because I had invested so much time and so much effort and moved 900 miles away from all of my family and everybody I know. And it didn't work out. And she knew that in my heart, I'm a woodworker. And in my skills, I'm a woodworker. And so she, pardon me. So she steered me back towards woodworking.
Isn't it?
In 2000?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Beautiful. No, I was going to say, it's just beautiful when someone supports you on the most authentic and loving way, you know?
So she got me my lathe, a wood lathe, for my birthday in 2016. And the wood lathe has always been my favorite, like right from the very start has always been my favorite. And she knew that too. So she got me a lathe, and I started making bowls on it. And I had never made bowls. I had always made like, pardon me, I got a hair in my mouth. So I had never really made bowls. I had always made jewelry boxes and lamps and things like that. And so I decided to start making bowls. And the first bowl I ever made, there's a friend of ours who's he makes documentaries, and he came and filmed me carving the first part of that bowl. And I'm glad he filmed me that day, because the next day I did something very stupid, and I had my finger in a place I knew it shouldn't have been. I got complacent, and the lathe dug into the wood, and I got stuck between the side of the chisel and a part of the lathe called the tool rest, and it smushed my finger like a grape.
Ouch.
11 stitches and 8 weeks to heal up. I left a trail of blood like a wounded cowboy in a John Wayne movie all the way to the back door.
Boy, talk about being visual.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. And I learned a valuable lesson. Yeah. Don't put your finger there, you idiot. And so that bowl has there's DNA evidence that I made that bowl.
Yeah, I bet there is. But also, you won't repeat that again. And also,
no, I will not.
We tend to, like, you're not going to do it twice, but also you probably have a much stronger spatial, you're more aware of space because of that incident, which is quite extraordinary. I'm sorry that did happen, but like you said, things happen for a reason.
Yeah,
right?
You learn. Luckily, I just needed some stitches. Literally the first thing that went through my mind is, now it's going to be weeks before I can finish this project. I was so mad because it happened so quick. It didn't hurt. And then I checked out my finger, and it was, it was in pretty bad shape, and I knew it was going to take quite a while. But the first thing I did is I moved it. Okay. Tendons are okay. Touched it. Okay. I can still feel. Nerves are okay. Just need some needle point.
Some needle point. Way to make it artistic.
Yeah. The funniest thing, the weirdest thing happened when we get to the emergency room where Annie's leading me in, and I've got this giant bloody wad of paper towels around my finger. And this older lady that's walking out looks at us and says, "Shame on you." And then keeps walking. To this day, we don't know if she was talking to me or Annie or why.
That's her journey.
We laughed at each other.
What are you going to do? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like everybody's on their own. Everyone has their own journey. We're all on the journey together, but we all have our individual paths that we're taking. So you just send her out love and light, and hopefully she's okay too.
Yeah. Well, and poor Annie, she had a hard time dealing with that. That was,
I imagine. Yeah. Traumatic.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you real quick, and this is a question I really haven't asked a lot of people, but do you have any influences or people that you admire that might be blind artists or other artists that that inspire you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always loved sculpture and woodwork in particular. And so there's a quote by, I think it's Michelangelo. He carved David, right? The statue. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. He was asked how he could carve such a beautiful statue out of stone. And he says, the image was already there. I just took away the extra. Ooh, I love that.
That is so beautiful.
Much. Yeah. So, and I've always really admired that kind of thing. And I guess I wish I could remember his name. There's a guy that on PBS, he had the Woodwright shop, and he did all of his stuff like with old tools. He even had his lathe was a treadle powered lathe. And I always really looked up to him. I wish I could remember that guy's name.
Oh, Roy Underhill.
Yeah. That's
Roy Underhill. Yep.
Yeah, I always really looked up to him.
Yeah.
And just admired the just beautiful creations he could make out of wood. And around the town I grew up in and stuff is very, like a very Western kind of place, you know what I mean? So there were lots of very highly skilled carvers and woodworkers. And I can't believe I didn't think of this till just now. My grandpa on my dad's side, there's a statue he carved that I actually have. It's a cowboy about this tall. And he's standing there rolling a smoke. And it's all carved out of wood. And then he painted it. His hat, the smoke he's rolling, the bullets in his belt, just everything. And he carved another one is a vaquero carrying a rifle, leading his pack mule. And it's all like all the packages on the mule are like made of canvas with brass bands and stuff. It's amazing. And then some paintings that he did, and I've always really admired that.
Beautiful. And you look at that, you brought it back to your own lineage. We admire so many people that are famous for what they do, or they're seen in their public eye, but it really does come back to our own ancestry a lot of times. The gifts that we have are not ours and ours alone. It's passed down from ancestors. So that's beautiful. So before we go though, I do want to play a game with you, because I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. And I have a feeling you're going to be really good at this, because I do a word association game. And basically during our conversation, I just throw out a word of just the conversation we've been having. And I want you to come back with just the first word that comes to mind, like not too much thought to it. You're probably going to nail this. I have this feeling. Okay. So you ready? Here we go. Piano.
Repair.
Woodwork.
Carving.
Colors.
Blue.
Suicide.
Attempt.
Blind.
Awareness.
Love it. Honeybee.
My honeybee.
Love.
Honeybee.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful. So, thank you so much, John. You are a delight, and it just comes through everything that you do. And I haven't even met you in person, but it comes through everything you share. That you've put out there as a gift on social media. Thank God for social media for this reason, right?
Yeah. I agree.
It inspires me to want to do more. Like I said, I'm recent to the TikTok world, but I realize the gifts we have need to be shared, because if we can touch, move, and inspire so many more people by putting content out there that is positive. And you definitely do that in the most beautiful, inspiring way. So is there anything that you would like to share with Holistically Speaking listeners as we close this beautiful conversation?
Well, that if you're having a hard time, things are temporary. Everything changes. And if you know that and you realize that, it's easier to see how you can affect the change. And sometimes you are simply swept along by change. You don't have a choice in the matter. And then you just have to go with the flow. But going with the flow also helps you to be the one that figures out where you're going to land. And those are some things to really keep in mind when you're having a hard time, that you can do it. And it's also okay to be sad. It's okay to not be okay. Everybody's sad. Everybody hurts. Emotions are not good or bad in and of themselves. It's what we do with those emotions.
Beautiful. Then we share that all the time, is that we have to love all parts of ourselves, and to feel one way means that we have the ability to feel the other way. It's the yin and yang. So I love that you share that, because yes, it would be lovely to be joyful 24/7, but we need to be able to feel and have this kind of like meter of where we want to be. Right. So,
exactly.
Beautiful.
And people need to know that's one thing I always like to do, is try and dispel the stigma around mental health. Yeah. It's okay if you feel bad. There's such a stigma that's put on suicide attempts and depression, and admitting that you're having a problem. There's so many problems that could be solved in this world, and so many lives that could be saved if that stigma was done away with, and people knew that it was okay to feel bad and to ask for help.
Yes.
That needs to happen.
Beautiful. Thank you for putting that out there in the space, and letting one person might really resonate with that. That's a new listener or a current listener that might just really resonate with that message. And I hope they do, because you're here for a reason. You're a gift. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
You can connect with John on his website and through his social media on Instagram and TikTok at The Blind Woodsman. And you'll find those links on the podcast page. And if you need support, let's set up a complimentary coaching call to discover how havening can help you on your healing journey. Just go to hilaryrusso.com/havening and book your call now. If you've enjoyed this episode and the Holistically Speaking podcast, consider subscribing and leaving a rating and review wherever your headphones take you, so you never miss a beat. Holistically Speaking is edited by David Seiss, with music by Lidbone Redding, and recorded on Squadcast. Sending out the love, my friend. Thanks for listening. Be kind to your mind, and don't forget to laugh.